Sixth SA Citizen Satisfaction Index shows citizen satisfaction and trust in government is at an all-time low. Those who took part cited a lack of municipal service delivery as one of the biggest problems. To get more on this, I'm joined by the founder of the South African Consumer Satisfaction Index, Andre Schroeder. Andre, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you for coming in. So I touched on it a bit there in the intro, but why are people, especially in the metropolitan areas, so unhappy?
Well, the basic model that we follow is we look at customer expectations and we then look at delivery against those expectations. So within a municipal area, those would be citizen expectations. So what do they expect from their elected leaders and from the municipality in terms of service delivery, in terms of everything that you find within a municipal area?
And I'm looking here, you say that what you found is that of the 8 metropolitan areas that you polled, Cape Town has again emerged as the category leader, I beg your pardon, on overall citizen satisfaction. 4 large metros for the 6th consecutive year. The city is at 64.1 out of a possible 100. What are they doing right?
Well, if you look at the gap between the expectations of their citizens and their perception, they have the smallest gap. We must still note they are not meeting expectations. So there are still a large proportion of their citizens that are not happy, but they are doing it better than any of the other municipal areas. And that in itself, to give you an example, Cape Town has got a gap of minus 5.5, whereas someone like Mangaung has got a minus 22, literally below the expectations, what the average satisfaction came out on.
And let's talk about Mangaung, Bloemfontein, Botshabelo and Thaba Nchu. Those are the 3 areas that fall under the Mangaung Metro. They have polled the worst from this survey.
Yep.
What are the people of Mangaung unhappy about most?
Well, generally, almost without fail, the #1 complaint is about water, electricity. It's actually basics, roads, cleanliness of parks. It's not difficult things. And I think that in itself is the concern that we're raising in this release, is that there's an increasing expectations, especially now with elections, where everyone is raising expectations. And we're literally seeing the actual delivery against those expectations are widening. Over a matter of 5 years, the actual citizen satisfaction of the metros came down from 61 to 54. So we're missing something here.
Another interesting stat that I observed in just reading up on your index is that you spoke to some 2,506 people randomly, as I understand it.
Yes.
Is that a big enough sample, do you think, when we talk about areas that are home to millions of residents, essentially?
The obvious thing is that you want the sample as large as possible, but you get to a point where you don't need to survey and poll anymore. So we're aiming to do about 270 odd per metropolitan area, but we don't have the ability to say, well, it's in this particular suburb or that particular suburb. So we will just generalize that for the metropolitan area as a whole. This is in line with the international standards that we do. In America, they measure the total federal government on exactly the same basis. So typically the sample sizes varied between 255 for Buffalo City, as much as 327 for Ekurhuleni, 359 for Johannesburg. And this is just an indication. It's not a diagnostic to really drill down to the detailed problems.
Let's get more political, if you will, for a moment here, and talk about the areas that have swapped hands, if you will, since the last election. I'm thinking of Johannesburg, where it went from being under ANC control to now the DA, which was able to cobble up some sort of coalition. You look at Tshwane, the same situation there. The Nelson Mandela Bay Metro in the Eastern Cape, very much the same. Is the sentiment among residents that things have changed or worsened between that time when the areas changed power politically?
We have specifically asked citizens whether they believe that things improved, whether it stayed the same, and whether it actually deteriorated. There is a slight optimism that in some areas where the municipal council came together and they really said, we need to improve this, we have seen increases. For instance, if you look at the likes of Nelson Mandela Bay, up to the point when there was a leader change, they've actually increased from 51.8 to a high of 61.9, and then a massive 11 points decline. Whereas generally we see in most of the municipal areas there's a decline in the actual service perception.
And with that in mind, Andre, are people optimistic as we count down to election day next week? Do they still see elections as something that has the power to change their fortunes?
I certainly would like to hope so and believe that the only way that we can hold any organization accountable is for the consumer side to speak up. Citizens can do so through voting, but they can also do so through polling like this, where we can actually say, look at these numbers, they are extremely low. As a matter of fact, in all the industries, the metro councils that we measure is the lowest index for all the indices that we do.
We had a discussion yesterday with someone who was looking at interests in voting as far as young people are concerned, and I'm concerned, or not even concerned, I'm curious, in fact, if in your data there are any significant differences in the attitudes of younger and older residents.
Obviously, this is not a political study. We're looking at citizen satisfaction, and one of the things that we have found is that the trust in our local government is declining. And if trust is not there, you know, the whole voting process for next week, that's where we can actually change things. If you're unhappy, go and vote so that we can actually get the right leaders elected. I'm not just talking about national, I'm talking in general. So be an optimist and go and let your vote count.
All right, Andre, thank you. Andre is the founder of the South African Consumer Satisfaction Index. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Pleasure.